Today, as part of our celebration of Bold Women of Faith, we have some special messages because I thought, as on a day of speaking of bold women of faith, I need to step aside and let those bold women speak themselves.
So God, guide me and lead me this morning with your words and your messages of faith. Those words, God, guide me, lead me along the way. Let me walk each day with thee. That's kind of the simple message of my life, asking God to lead me and guide me. And today's message is one of those simple steps at this place at Mount Zion where people, through God, have led me and guided me. And I'm talking about the mission of Tosa Cares and how God has led me through many of you to that moment of creating Tosa Cares. Tosa Cares is really a story of many lives, and many of you are here a part of that story. But I'm just going to be speaking of my story and how that came to be alongside you. Tom and I joined Mount Zion, just a few years ago, about 43, and we've been here ever since. So many people have been a part of that life. I think it was Pastor P.J. Samuelson, a young pastor, who kind of brought us in, thinking, this is the place we wanted to be. He soon left, but others followed, strong ministers and people who have guided us along the way. Pastor Youngquist was one of those who brought us in and said, join the worship and music committee, and that's how we started. And then the request to teach Sunday school. And I said, I do that all day, all week long I'm teaching, and I really don't want to teach 6 days a week. And God spoke with me, and he said, I don't think that's the right answer. And after a few weeks or months, I followed the path of teaching for 20 years in Sunday school and leading Sunday school and being felt and led by children. And that group of faith, preparing for lessons with those children, and being inspired and listening to their stories and be guided by faith through them. When our children got to high school, one of the unique experiences was going to the youth gatherings. And that sounded like a great idea. We were a little hesitant, Tom and I, to do that. But we were led, said, we can do this. So we went with the youth to St. Louis to our first experience at a youth gathering. It took a year of preparation, as it does, to get ready to gain all the funds, the biblical study, the preparation with youth and parents and family and congregation. Just before we left, my father passed away. So my family was in Nebraska grieving as the loss of my father. And I said, I don't know if I can go from that to being with thousands of kids together. I don't know if I can do this. But Tom and I and Gina and Nate got in our car and we met the bus in St. Louis and gathered thousands of teenagers. And that inspiring time of uplift, they surrounded me with prayer and love and got me through that loss and felt the love of Christ with them, shouting and screaming and enjoying the togetherness that being at a youth gathering brings. And at that gathering, there was a special speaker, and that was Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who'd won the Pulitzer Prize for peacemaking in South Africa. And he had one simple message that has stayed with me. In fact, I wrote about it once when we were creating Lenten devotionals, and 2009, that stuck with me, and it still does. He spoke about the visualization of Jesus as our shepherd, and finding a lost sheep. Well, he said, in those illustrations, we often see that Jesus with that lost sheep, that beautiful little lamb, so pure and beautiful. And he said, that's not the real Jesus going out in the world and claiming that lost lamb, that lost and lonely and struggling lamb. That's messy business. Far from charming, it's often a distressing journey. That visualization kind of inspired me and stuck with me. How many people am I seeing out there when I'm struggling? Others, who am I not seeing in God's world? Back at church, there were people that were put in our lives that were connecting in our community to local food pantries. And I'm thinking of Nancy Schumacher, who her connection with the Tosa Food Pantry helped connect us as a congregation to the people's needs in our community. And I'm thinking of Dick Bachman. He was on the board of Tosa for Kids, another food and clothing ministry in Wauwatosa. Through those leaders, we as a congregation learned about food ministry and needs in our own community. It was an opening experience, and we were thankful to be a part of that journey. And then I'm thinking of two members, Lucy and Gerhard Fischer. And Lucy is one of the other people we're going to hear her voice. I would call them faith activists. They always took their faith and it was out in the world and challenging us in new ways. And they did for Tom and I as well, stepping into worlds that we had never been a part of. And that had to do with the partnership with Reformation Lutheran Church. That was a partnership that was connecting suburban churches with city churches. And Gerhard and Lucy were at the very beginning of that, the heart of that kind of ministry. Lucy began the store at Reformation, and some of you remember that. A store which offered clothing, household utensils, where people could come offer a cup of coffee at Reformation Church, bring people together in that ministry. And they invited people from Mount Zion, Lucy and Gerhard in particular, to be a part of that ministry. That was a little bit too much. I admired what they were doing, just couldn't quite go there yet. And then another pastor there, associate pastor, Mary Rowland, she was our first female pastor at Mount Zion. Some of you will remember her. She was now an associate pastor at Reformation. So she was guiding us and connecting. And there was one experience, Tom had just lost a job, and she asked Tom to come to Reformation and counsel and speak with others at Reformation who had lost jobs. So Tom said this experience wasn't what he was giving to them, it was what he found with the people of Reformation. They guided each other. They talked together and they found ways together. And that was kind of the beginning ways of our step into Reformation Church. With Pastor Mick and Pastor Mary Rowland and leaders like Gerhard and Lucy, we began to follow. We went to Bible studies. We sat across the table and had meals together. We did peace walks. We walked in the neighborhoods during the summer with signs and stopped along and talked with people. We gained friendships with the people of Reformation. We heard their stories. We listened to stories I had never heard before. I'd never have heard the stories of such poverty, of such life with violence in their neighborhoods, with such struggle with families that are torn apart by people imprisoned. Lives and stories of people who have been rejected, turned away, not considered worthy. But if you sat at a Bible study with them, you knew they were filled with faith, and they led us, they guided us. The Lord was working through them with Tom and I. We developed prayer partners, and Tom's partner was Thora Starlings, and mine was Dennis Smith. We've lived through a lot of life stories with each of them, and they've given us strength and power to live our own lives as well as we've been there for them. Prayer partners for over 20 years. Another point came into my life at this point was the opportunity of a program called Diakonia. Pastor Amy Ruman, another female pastor from here, now was part of the Synod life. And she brought this program to the Milwaukee Synod. Diakonia means to serve. This was a 2-year study program, so it would take quite a commitment to be a part of that, with theological discussions, kind of looking at your own skills and aptitudes in ministry and providing spiritual growth. But the purpose of that program was to provide each participant with the opportunity to discover their own God-given talents and strengths and give them purpose within their own congregation. Now, could I manage that? That's one of those doubting times. Conversations with Pastor Amy said, Linda, this is a perfect time. Join others. So there were 18 of us that started in that first class of 2 years of religious study, of listening to each other and our journeys. About midway in that class, Officer Judy Neuter, who was the leading person for TOSA for Kids, who I've gotten to know for many years of working with TOSA for Kids, said she's retiring and she's asking somebody to take on the ministry here, the work in the community with young people and families with clothing and food. Well, I hope you find somebody. She went to many churches and many people, many civic groups, individuals, and got the same response for month after month. No, I'm not the one. She didn't give up. She kept coming back and coming back. Eventually, I think through that diaconia class of feeling emboldened, feeling the faith working, is this how God is calling us, me, our congregation? So in December, 15 and a half years ago, we brought this idea to the outreach committee at Mount Zion and said, could we be the ones that have a place here at Mount Zion where people come here, everyone's be welcome, to give a helping hand? There was a lot of doubts and questions, how? But Dana O'Brien, one of the committee members, she was in her own life change. She was, as profession, a lawyer, just beginning to leave her profession to go into seminary. And she said to the group, isn't this what we're called to do? Aren't we here to offer help for clothing and food to help our neighbors? Okay, yes, we will do it. We don't know how. We went to the church and Pastor Johnson said yes. He gave us a room, not in the basement, but in part of Fellowship Hall. The congregation leadership teams said yes. We don't know how. We will find a way. And that's exactly what we did through the people right here at Mount Zion. People of, it was Mount Carmel and St. Matthews. They said, yes, we're going to help you in this beginning stage. And that beginning stage has grown. But just thinking of the snowstorm yesterday, it was 15 years ago, Good Friday, a big snowstorm, and our first distribution of food. And the church, we were so excited. TOSA for Kids have given us a list. They had 10 people's names that they have helped. We could only get through to 4 of those families, but 4 families said they were coming. But there was a snowstorm. The parking lot hadn't been plowed, just like yesterday. And we shoveled a path from the pantry door to the street, and those 4 families parked in the street, found that pathway to our door, and TOSA Cares ministry began. So much has happened since that time, and that's another story. But just think of the people in this place and what they have offered, that offer of hope. And yes, following God's will and way, we found a way with the help of God and so many others in our journey. And I wanted to say, along this way, one partner, I've mentioned him along the way, but that's Tom, who's been a partner in my faith and my life from the very beginning. We met as teenagers, well, not quite teenagers, 18-year-olds at college on a blind date. Tom proposed to me at the altar of the chapel at Valparaiso University, and that's really how our faith started together from the very beginning, and he has been a partner all the way along. So when I say I, it's we. We've done so much as helping encouraging each other, and that's what you have done here too as people of faith, but people that have encouraged us and shown us the way. So, God, we are thankful for this time, for this place, for the people that have been here before us, for the people here now, and the people to come. We don't know where you'll lead us, but we know you will guide us and lead us. And I ask that God will be with each of you, guiding you and leading you in your faith. Amen.
Good morning. I'm here to read a story about my grandmother. I've never read in front of a group before ever in my life, so be nice, please. My grandmother, Martha Krensky, was born on October 7th, 1900, in Racine, Wisconsin. She grew up in the surrounding area here in Milwaukee and attended the Wisconsin-Milwaukee Conservatory of Music, her main interest being piano. My grandfather attended Concordia College, and the two met and married. She had been asked to stay on with the symphony, but she declined and learned and played the organ for Grandpa's churches. She also gave piano lessons for many years. Together they had 6 children and adopted 2 more. In my grandpa's 40s, he suffered a major stroke, which left his right side paralyzed. Afterwards, Grandma took on the job of caring for most of all his needs, including getting dressed in the morning, help with meals, bathing, taking him for his walks, exercises every day. They would walk through the cemetery, which, when they were retired in Shawano, was directly across the road and behind their home. It was a nice, peaceful place to walk. She also helped him get ready for bed every night. Grandpa was particular. He used half and half in his cereal each morning and have a fresh serving of fresh fruit on the side. When we would go out to eat, he would ask for no ice, thinking he would get more Coca-Cola that way. Sometimes that worked and sometimes not. I remember all the driving that my grandma did to help him do his pastor jobs, visit the sick in the hospitals and the nursing homes and the rehab centers, and the pastor calls for the home communion that he would do too. I remember because a lot of times I would be along on the ride too. She also spent her Saturday mornings practicing music on the organ for Sunday worship. I know a lot of hymns because I listened to her practice. Grandma took care of us too, me and my 5 older brothers. She sometimes had to drive into the city to get us after school on Friday and bring us out to her place so Mom could be a nurse and Dad could work too. Grandma had a freezer in the basement, always filled with our favorite ice cream. In her kitchen, a candy dish with separate trays filled with everyone's favorite candy. My grandma sent my mom to live with relatives when she was in 1st grade because they didn't have a Christian school to send to her to close by their home. And Grandma felt it was really important for my mom to have a Christian education. But my mom got a fever at Christmas time and asked to come home, so Grandma let her. During wartime, my mom wanted to help and become a nurse. Grandma was afraid and also wanted my mom to be a Christian teacher instead. She was upset that my mom chose to be a nurse. But Grandpa proudly put the blue star in the window. My mom did play piano for the troops while she served in the Army during World War II. My grandma's dedication to her family and to her church and her faith is shown through her children and also her grandchildren, of which she had 29 grandchildren. We would all meet up every year at the lake in the Upper Peninsula every summer for a week, and the men would golf and fish, and the ladies and kids sunbathe and swim and enjoy the sauna. We did this for many years. We were quite a gang. Her boys, 3, became lifelong Lutheran ministers, and one boy a Christian teacher, and her girls Lutheran teachers, and my mom a registered nurse who served her country. The grandchildren also are Lutheran ministers and teachers, so her legacy continues to live on. My cousin Joel is even an organist for a church out east near DC. They served many churches in Cascade, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nebraska, and retired in Shawano, Wisconsin in 1972. My grandpa died in 1978 from congestive heart failure. And in 1979, my grandma died as a result of a head-on collision, along with her brother Ted and sister-in-law Esther. That was involved, a utility truck hit them head-on. They are buried next to each other in Cascade, Wisconsin. They're home for many years. Thank you.
Lucy Fisher, Lucy Fisher wrote this in 2013 and addressed it to her granddaughter. And it's entitled, Passing It On, An Ethical Will. As long as we have not lived out our truth, it is someone else's truth. From Gandhi. My ethical will is not a formula for the good life. No way can I tell anyone how to live or what to believe. I formed my own life by using as guideposts the wisdom of others along the way, some alive, some past. Here's what I learned and what I believe in, and to be honest, didn't always master. Goals to work toward, guideposts. Take whatever helps you to form your own truth. This is what worked for me. Love. I could write that one word and quit right now, but you know me, I won't stop there. Unconditional love is the prism through which I see my faith, family, community, and surroundings. Faith. Lo, I am with you always, ever, to the end of the world, from Matthew. This was my confirmation verse and my comfort throughout the years. I believe in the Creator God. I accept the divine mystery of God. There is so much that is unknowable. I believe that God has expectations of me. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? From Micah. I chose as model the life and teachings of Jesus. My space. I tried to keep my corner of the world clean. Treasures. I try to find the treasure within me and to use it well. I try to find the treasure in the other and help bring it forth. Family. I have unsurpassing love for my own family, but I also feel there is a larger definition of family in which we are each other's mothers and fathers and children and sisters and brothers. In all I do, I need to ask, how does this affect the common good? Children are most tender and precious beings, small buds of possibility that must not be crushed. beauty. I want to move more slowly through life so that I don't miss the beauty of the creation around me, so that I hear the music and move to the dance and feast my eyes on the inspired arts. Truth. Silence can be golden. Silence can be deadly. I want always to have the courage to break the deadly silences that perpetuate warring and injustice. I want to hold up the truth that every person has rights and deserves respect. Joy. Even though I do often observe the dark side of human nature playing out, I try to rid myself of cynicism and despair. I want to be a person of hope. I want to find the humor in living, and I want to laugh until it hurts. Learning. I love words and ideas. I vow to be open to new learnings till my last breath. Since life is an ever-changing scenario, I want to be ready on tiptoe for all of the surprises. I send this with my love, and I ask that you pass it on.
Morning. What is boldness? Google says it's an ability to take risks, to be confident and courageous. When I was asked to share with you, people most often mentioned the summers when I took trips into communist-controlled Eastern Europe to secretly deliver Bibles and other Christian books to our Christian contacts there. Now, I've never been considered a risk taker, and I was an unlikely candidate for mission work. I was used to thinking of missionaries as being out in halfway around the world, living in a hut and talking to the native people about Jesus. I couldn't imagine doing that. I was first challenged about mission work at a singles conference at a mission festival in the late 1970s. I was a divorced, single parent with 2 small children. And we were asked, if God wanted you to be a missionary, are you willing to say yes? Well, not whether you're a likely candidate, but if God wants you to be a missionary, are you willing? I hesitantly raised my hand, yes, because if he wanted me to do it, I couldn't imagine, I would do my best to do what God wanted. In succeeding years at these annual events, the questions became more focused. Am I preparing to be a missionary? Am I praying for the opportunity? Am I willing to let God choose the time and mission job that he wanted me to do? I started taking theology classes. I got to know career missionaries who told me about their calling, and I received their prayer letters and prayed for them regularly and supported them financially whenever I could. I sought out people I knew who were looking into short-term and long-term mission trips to tell me about their experiences. In the fall of 1986, I met with a friend, Karen, who went on a trip to Europe and smuggled Bibles to believers. Unbelievable. That happened. That's needed. After she showed a video about the mission to my Bible study, I said to her, Karen, I'm really interested in doing that. When my children are grown, I want to talk to you about that. and do that sometime. And she said, Pat, if God wants you to do this, then he will work out the details. I think you should start inquiring now. The details sounded impossible. I couldn't imagine if God worked out my details. I would definitely know he wanted me to go. I contacted Eastern European Bible Mission, the missions committee at my church, as friends and family, to pray with me for direction. And on May 11th, 1987, just a few months after I talked with Karen, I wrote a prayer letter to my friends and family and other people who might be interested in what God was doing in my life. Here is part of what I wrote. A few weeks ago, I learned that I'd been accepted as a summer missionary. I was able to get 5 weeks off work. That was amazing. God even supplied me the initial deposit for my expenses in Europe down to the exact amount a few days before it was due. I listed some prayer concerns: travel arrangements to be made at the lowest possible cost, someone to stay with John and Carolyn while I'm gone, spiritual preparation so that I would be willing and able to do everything God wanted me to do, and physical preparation, packing and arranging for a 5-week absence from home, and financial provision. From the May letter to when I left for Europe at the end of July, God worked out all the details. A friend volunteered to stay with the kids, ages 16 and 18 now. And financially, God supplied over and above what I needed for Europe, travel, and even the extra expenses that came up. So I wasn't just worried, as you might have thought I would be, on that amazing first trip. In fact, telling you this story today, I'm amazed at how many obstacles God took out of the way so that I could go. I had many faithful people praying for me while I was gone. And when I got home, I had amazing stories to tell, to show about our contacts and God's strength and provision throughout our trip. Through the hardest times in my life, I have learned that drawing near to God is the only thing we can do. I'm thankful. I've learned to share my faith in God because of my experiences, to share my experiences, but other ways of showing people that God is working in my life. We had a contact in Romania who said to us, here, we must pray for our food, our freedom to worship God, our daily needs. We don't forget about God. I feel sorry for you in the United States because you have so many distractions that take you away from God. It's humbling to see the faith of these persecuted believers and exciting to know that they now are free since communism has left that country. But there are other countries in the world that it's not the case, and there are persecuted Christians all over. They still need our help and our prayers. But with all of that, it's really depending on God that gets us through those times. If I wouldn't have known, without a doubt, that God had been sending me, I wouldn't have been brave enough to cross those borders with Bibles, to meet our contacts, and give them greetings from the United States and tell them that we're praying for them and that we care about them. And now I try to take opportunities to tell people how God is working in my life. Even if it's not a dramatic story, He's still working and He's still doing great things.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like if you heard good news and subscribe to stay up to date on the latest message. Peace be with you.